All right, so one thing I want to talk to you guys today about is ankle mobility. A lot of people just neglect any kind of stretching, any kind of mobility work. And if you're having issues with like any kind of leg days, squats, just bending over in general, just everyday, day-to-day stuff, your ankle mobility could be compromised. So in this video, we're going to talk about how you can improve your ankle mobility, exercises that you can do, what causes poor ankle mobility, and things of that nature. So hopefully, if you do have these issues, you can use this video and hopefully correct I don't want to say mistakes, but maybe the issues that are causing you some pain, lack of mobility, and get it corrected. So first and foremost, why does ankle mobility actually matter? So if we just think about this in a day-to-day aspect of, living life, right? Um, you need to be able to squat to do things, right? Like not just in a barbell, squat down to pick things up off the ground, just perform a day-to-day normal life, right? Well, if you have tight ankles, which then will, be correlated to poor ankle mobility, this is going to limit your squat depth and your form. Now, we know that just in a normal day-to-day aspect, you're not really paying much attention to your form in a squat per se, right? If you're picking something off the ground. But if you have tight ankles, it's going to limit what you can actually do while you're trying to perform that movement. So if you think about it, if you're, having poor ankle mobility, limited dorsiflexion, which is essentially getting knee over toe, you're going to have more tendency to bend over, kind of at the hip, putting more torque and strain in the back, which will produce excessive torso lean, which again is going to, irritate that spinal column. As far as like a training aspect goes, just your risk of injury is going to go up. Poor ankle mobility can affect your balance, your gait, which is essentially like how you walk, right? If you look at somebody who has never stretched in their life, their ankles are very, very tight. They walk kind of like a two by four, right? They're just very rigid. But if you have somebody that has good ankle mobility, and has a good gait with their walking stance, running stance, whatever, you could definitely tell that they do indeed have good ankle mobility. So, you know, these things that we're going to talk about, these aren't like very extremist things that you have to do to get better ankle mobility, because even small improvements is going to unlock a lot of performance. So if we look at what an actual comparison is between ankle mobility and a squat pattern in itself. So if you think about it, right, if your ankles are very, very tight, if you start to squat down some, you're going to have your heels come up off the ground, or you're going to shift all of your weight into your toes. In this in general, like that looks uncomfortable, right? You're shifting all of your weight into your actual toes, and you're not, properly, if we're thinking about a squat pattern here, able to get into a comfortable position essentially. But if you look at, good ankle mobility, they're in this squat all the way down to parallel. Heels are staying planted. You have full dorsiflexion, which indicates that the knee is over the toe. If you look here, knee is way over the toe here. Because of poor ankle mobility. So these are just two examples of tight ankles, and then not tight ankles, which is good ankle mobility. So if we look at just the ankle anatomy basics, we're not going through an anatomy lecture here, but in a very generalized manner, the tibia and the fibia form the ankle joint in itself, and it is supported by three ligament groups. And the primary movement is dorsiflexion and plantar flexion, which, a dorsiflexion is you like, raising your feet up, and, plantar flexion is essentially toes down. So if you have poor ankle mobility, both of these will be very hard to do, simply because the, ligaments and the ankle mobility, or lack of ankle mobility that you have in this joint is just not there. And then honestly, well, obviously, like calf muscles, the tightness of those can play a role into your ankle mobility as well too. But really and truly, we're focusing on the actual ankle in itself. But that's not to negate the fact that tight calves, that can pull on your, ankle structure in itself, and that could cause poor ankle mobility as well too, which is something that I struggle with. My calves just stay tight all the time, just from all the steps that I get. I'm on my feet a good bit, and then just working out, my calves stay tight, and when the calves are tight, it's pulling at the ankle. Hence giving me poorer ankle mobility than I would like to have. So if we look at what the common ankle restrictions are for somebody with, limited mobility, um, like we're going to see tight calves, tight feet, tight, just kind of along that Achilles heel area there, like all that is going to be very, very tight. Any kind of like previous injuries, like ankle sprains, if you had any kind of surgeries there, scar tissue, that's obviously going to make that ankle mobility worse as well too. And then just in comparison, these muscles are going to be weaker. You just don't have those stabilizer muscles built up good enough to where it's actually supporting the ankle itself is a good strong foundation supporting the rest of your body. So one good test that you can do here is can you squat with your heels completely flat on the ground, your knees tracking over over your toes without your heels coming up. If you can't, your dorsiflexion is limited, and you need to work on getting that mobility unrestricted. So if you look right, like a full range of motion here is about 15 degrees. If you look from where the back of the heel is, kind of to where the calf is, that's a good, 15 degrees. But again, if you look at the back of the heel in comparison to, a straight line to where the calf is here, it's a very small range. It's only 5%. So, we're talking in like very small ranges here, but I mean, the ankle and the ligaments and the tendons and all that stuff that's in that, whatever you want to call it, just intricate mess of what the ankle is essentially. Those ranges, even though it's a small range, a few degrees can definitely make a pretty big difference in that aspect. So, if we're looking at what you can do to actually improve the ankle mobility, these are just a couple of things, just three basic ones here. Wall mobilization, essentially, you just stand against a wall, two hands on the wall, and you're, uh, having your feet staggered and you're leaning forward into that, trying to get a good stretch on the ankle joint in itself. Another one is calf stretching. Again, tight calves are going to, affect your ankle mobility. So if you do have, tight calves, just make sure that you stretch them. Either A, do it on something like this to where you're stretching this back calf here as you lean forward, or you could even step up on this box here, and essentially do a calf stretch of both feet to get that calf to open up. Another one is going to be this single leg balance here. Now, a lot of people do these on like those Basu balls in the gym to where they'll take their shoes off, they'll just be in sock feet, and they'll stand on one of them Basu balls, and they'll have their arms out or have somebody hold them, and essentially they're trying to strengthen those stabilizer muscles, tendons, ligaments, all that good stuff, down toward the bottom of the leg, to where like you're not shaking so much on the ball in itself too. Another one, I can't think of the exact word for it. It's like ankle distension, distraction is somewhere along there. Distraction, I think, is what it is. Essentially, you would like if the wall's behind you, you're standing 4 to 5 feet in front of the wall, you have a band anchored behind you, and you wrap that around your foot, and essentially you do a lunge forward. That's gonna, go against the grain, I guess is the best way to put that, against how the ankle wants to move. And that band is just giving you a little bit of resistance to pull you back. So obviously, don't go full tilt if you don't have any ankle mobility at all. You might tear something, but just 5 to 10 minutes of this work daily is going to open you up. From an ankle mobility standpoint, pretty good. And this, honestly can be correlated into just a daily stretching routine in itself as well, too. Now, if we're looking at like a practical application, obviously start with just daily mobility work, 5 to 10 minutes a day. Um, and you should, try to retest that, dorsiflexion every 2 weeks or so. That's where that, 5%, or that 5 degree angle and that 15-degree angle, kind of comes into play there. Just see how far that you can, move your foot up, uh, in relevance is, to where it was day one, right? And then, after that, weeks 3 to 4, after 1 to 2 weeks of doing this, just basic stuff, the daily mobility, things of that nature, you could progress into doing something like squats, just make sure that you're progressive overloading here. But the main key here, though, is that you're not allowing your heels to come up. And then week 5 is where that you can start doing more intricate movements. This would even be something like, I don't know if you guys have seen like those foam mats. They're about this thick and I don't know, maybe a foot. long, about 2 foot wide. Essentially, you would take your shoes off, stand on that. It's kind of like the Basu ball, but it's a little more stable, I would say, and you're able to do like more mobility style exercises on that, which is going to then, strengthen the stabilizing muscles as well too. Um, Another thing, like if you're just having trouble with the ankle mobility and you can't get into the squat depth that you need to, you can always buy squat shoes, or use a heel elevated platform. I personally wear squat shoes just because my ankle mobility isn't the best. It is getting better, but for the sake of just, I don't want to say trying to get me there faster, but this is like an aid that I can use to get my ankle mobility better. I mean, pretty much in an instant, right? So the shoes that I wear when I'm doing any kind of quad work to where I want to get as much dorsiflexion as possible, that knee over toe, I'm wearing my squat shoes. Essentially, it's a heel about that thick, and it slopes downward toward the toe. That way, that my foot is elevated, and that gives me that 5 to 10% elevation as far as that angle goes, to get me to that proper dorsiflexion again, that knee over toe. So, just if you're having any issues like with squatting down, things like that, the biggest takeaway here is just make sure that you start with, some kind of daily mobility work. Um, my favorite one to do just on a random whim of a moment is, like you just squat down and just sit in that squat for as long as you can. If I'm watching TV here at home, instead of me just, sitting on the couch, I'll stand up, get down in that squat position, put my elbows inside of my knees, and kind of stretch that out as well too, and just stay in that position for as long as I comfortably can. To me, that's better than just sitting on the couch, not doing anything. You could be, passively stretching, and helping yourself, further down the line. So, biggest takeaway here is that your mobility, it will pay off. It's not a waste of time. And I'm not saying this for you guys. I'm also saying this for me as well too. It would definitely help me if I put more effort and consistency into my stretching. It would be a lie to say that I stretch 7 days a week. It would be a lie to say it's 6 days a week. It's, typically 3 to 4 ish days a week, but more or less just start out slow, build it up to where like you can stretch for a good 10 to 15 minutes daily. And then obviously incorporates, some of that ankle mobility stuff into there as well too. And you'll be able to hopefully train pain free for a long time to come.